worth billions of dollars. Yet not all chocolate is created equal. Many of the most recognizable brands lining American supermarket shelves contain ingredients that should seriously concern anyone who actually reads labels. Even more troubling are the ethical issues behind how this chocolate is produced. On Shelf Truth today, we are exposing 8 chocolate brands you should absolutely avoid. These are not obscure niche products. They are major brands sold in nearly every grocery store and gas station across the country. The problems range from toxic heavy metals to child labor to products that barely qualify as real chocolate at all. This industry operates with shockingly little oversight. Independent testing has revealed dangerous levels of lead and cadmium, even in products marketed to children, while child labor on cocoa farms in West Africa remains widespread and routine. Brand number 1 is Hershey's Milk Chocolate. Independent testing conducted by Consumer Reports has shown that Hershey's Milk Chocolate contains lead and cadmium at levels that exceed California's legal limits for safe daily consumption. Lead is a neurotoxin with no safe exposure threshold and is known to cause developmental delays, reduced IQ, and behavioral problems in children, while cadmium accumulates in the kidneys and bones and can cause long-term organ damage. This contamination comes from both cocoa soil and processing methods, and Hershey's relies heavily on extremely cheap cocoa sourced from regions known for high cadmium contamination. While premium chocolate makers routinely reject contaminated cocoa batches, Hershey's accepts the lowest cost cocoa available, has spent years lobbying against stricter regulations, and consistently prioritizes profit over consumer safety. Compounding the issue, the product contains very little actual cocoa and is made mostly from sugar, milk, and vegetable oils, making it closer to a candy bar flavored like chocolate than real chocolate. On the ethical side, Hershey's also performs poorly, as investigations continue to document children working on cocoa farms that supply the company, largely because fair wages for adult laborers are not paid. Brand number 2 is Nestlé, the corporation behind Crunch, Butterfinger, Baby Ruth, and many other chocolate products sold throughout the United States. Nestlé is widely regarded as having the worst record on child labor in the entire chocolate industry. Multiple lawsuits and investigative reports have documented that Nestlé knowingly sourced cocoa from plantations in Ivory Coast, where children were forced to work in conditions comparable to slavery. Children as young as 12 harvest cocoa under dangerous conditions, wield machetes, carry heavy loads, and are exposed to pesticides without protective equipment. For more than 2 decades, Nestlé has publicly promised to eliminate child labor from its supply chain, yet independent investigations continue to find children working on farms that supply the company. A lawsuit reached the United States Supreme Court, which dismissed the case on jurisdictional grounds without addressing the substance of the child slavery allegations, allowing Nestlé to avoid accountability without meaningfully fixing the problem. In addition to these ethical failures, Nestlé chocolates have also been found to contain elevated levels of lead and cadmium, including in products marketed directly to children using colorful packaging and cartoon imagery. The quality of the chocolate itself is poor, as Nestlé uses minimal cocoa and maximum sugar. A Crunch bar consists largely of Rice Crisps and sugar with only a thin coating of chocolate, just enough to legally qualify as a chocolate bar. These products are heavily processed, cheaply produced, and serve as a clear example of a corporate strategy that consistently places profit above health, ethics, and transparency. Brand number 3 is Mars, the manufacturer behind M&M's, Snickers, Milky Way, and Twix. These products are among the most heavily processed chocolate items on the market and contain long ingredient lists that resemble a chemistry lab more than food. M&M's contain multiple artificial food dyes, such as Blue 1, Blue 2, Red 40, Yellow 5, and Yellow 6, all petroleum-derived colors that have been linked in studies to hyperactivity and behavioral issues in children. While European countries require warning labels for these dyes, no such warnings are mandated in the United States. The candy shell of M&Ms is composed primarily of sugar, cocoa butter, and skim milk, with very little real cocoa, and much of the flavor comes from artificial additives rather than chocolate itself. Snickers presents similar concerns, as its ingredient list includes corn syrup, sugar, partially hydrogenated soybean oil, and artificial flavors. Partially hydrogenated oils contain trans fats, which are banned in many countries but still permitted in small amounts in the United States. Mars also uses palm oil, which contributes to deforestation in Indonesia and Malaysia and destroys critical orangutan habitats, while the company's sustainability promises remain largely unverifiable. Independent testing has also detected lead and cadmium in Mars products at levels considered concerning for children. Mars has repeatedly been linked to child labor on West African cocoa farms. And despite public commitments, low-cost cocoa continues to take priority over fair labor practices and meaningful reform. Brand number 4 is Russell Stover, the largest boxed chocolate manufacturer in the United States. The heart-shaped boxes and affordable pricing hide some of the lowest quality chocolate products on the market. Ingredients are selected purely based on cost, with little to no regard for quality or health. Russell Stover uses artificial vanillin instead of real vanilla, a flavoring derived from petrochemicals or byproducts of the wood processing industry. As a result, consumers are effectively eating petroleum-based compounds that are marketed as premium chocolate. The chocolate coatings contain very little cocoa and are made primarily from sugar, palm kernel oil, and whey, while real cocoa butter is replaced with cheaper fats. This means the product is technically compound chocolate rather than real chocolate. The cream fillings are also dominated by corn syrup, sugar, and partially hydrogenated oils, with little to no real cream. Excessive amounts of soy lecithin are added to compensate for poor cocoa quality and reduced cocoa butter content. Russell Stover sources cocoa from regions with documented child labor issues, but does not meaningfully participate in credible certification programs for ethical sourcing. To extend shelf life, preservatives such as potassium sorbate are added, even though high-quality chocolate does not require preservatives. In this case, shelf stability is clearly prioritized over freshness, ethics, and quality. Brand number 5 is Palmer, the manufacturer of the familiar seasonal chocolate figures like Easter bunnies and Christmas Santas that appear in nearly every drugstore and discount retailer. By U.S. legal standards, these products are not actually chocolate, which is why they are labeled as chocolatey or chocolate-flavored. The reason is simple. Palmer uses no cocoa butter whatsoever and relies entirely on vegetable fats. Sugar and palm kernel oil appear first on the ingredient list, while cocoa shows up much later and is used only for color and a minimal hint of flavor. Without cocoa butter, a product cannot legally be called real chocolate, making these items sugar and fat-based confections that merely imitate the shape of chocolate. These products are manufactured at the lowest possible cost, where quality is irrelevant and appearance for holiday sales is the only priority. The primary consumers are children, whose parents believe they are buying chocolate when they are actually purchasing a mixture of sugar, vegetable oil, and artificial flavorings. The chocolate taste comes almost entirely from artificial additives rather than cocoa itself. Palmer has no meaningful commitments to ethical sourcing, purchases the cheapest cocoa available on the market, and completely ignores child labor, environmental destruction, and fair compensation as long as costs remain low. Brand number 6 is Whitman's Sampler, a brand that has existed since 1912, but whose chocolate quality has steadily declined over decades. After multiple ownership changes, modern Whitman's products have become some of the oldest and stalest chocolates still sold in stores today. These boxed chocolates often sit in warehouses and on store shelves for months, sometimes even years, before being purchased. Preservatives make this long shelf life possible, but they cannot prevent the loss of flavor and texture. The chocolate coatings are made from compound chocolate using vegetable fats instead of cocoa butter, which creates a waxy mouthfeel and flat taste. Real chocolate melts smoothly and delivers layered flavors, qualities that Whitman's products lack entirely. The fillings are dominated by corn syrup, sugar, and partially hydrogenated oils, while fruit fillings rely on artificial flavors and artificial colors. Nut fillings contain only minimal amounts of low-quality nuts. Petroleum-derived food dyes are added to visually enhance otherwise inferior ingredients. The elaborate gold foil packaging is designed to suggest quality and tradition, but it hides the reality that these are highly processed, outdated confections. Whitman's provides no transparency about the origin of its cocoa, strongly suggesting that the cheapest available cocoa is used without ethical sourcing standards. Brand number 7 is Ghirardelli, a brand positioned in the United States as a premium chocolate option. Its San Francisco heritage and higher price point create the impression of superior quality, but independent testing and close examination of the ingredient list reveal that Ghirardelli delivers mid-tier chocolate at premium prices. Studies have shown that Ghirardelli products contain levels of lead and cadmium comparable to significantly cheaper brands, meaning the higher cost does not provide better protection from heavy metal contamination. A major issue is the high sugar content, even in dark chocolate varieties that should primarily consist of cocoa. Sugar is used to mask lower quality cocoa, rather than improve flavor. Ghirardelli also uses relatively high amounts of soy lecithin, which often indicates cost-cutting on cocoa butter, as high-quality chocolate requires minimal emulsifiers. The brand sources cocoa from West Africa, where child labor is widespread, and while sustainability claims are made, oversight and enforcement are minimal and ineffective. The elevated price reflects branding and marketing rather than better ingredients or ethical sourcing. Although Ghirardelli is owned by a Swiss company, the products sold in the United States are manufactured specifically to meet American standards and are not comparable to high-quality Swiss chocolate. Brand number 8 is Hershey's Special Dark, a chocolate marketed as a healthier option due to its higher cocoa content. But in reality, it carries the highest heavy metal contamination of all major chocolate brands tested. Consumer Reports testing revealed that just 1 ounce of Hershey's Special Dark contains lead and cadmium levels that significantly exceed California's Proposition 65 safety limits. Regular consumption results in heavy metal exposure far above what is considered safe. Dark chocolate contains more cocoa solids, and those solids are exactly where heavy metals concentrate, making this so-called healthier option more dangerous than milk chocolate. This poses a serious risk, especially for children and pregnant women, because lead exposure during development can cause irreversible neurological damage, while cadmium accumulates in the body and can lead to long-term kidney disease. Any potential antioxidant benefits are overwhelmingly outweighed by these health risks. Hershey's has been aware of these contamination issues for years, yet continues to sell the product without warning labels and has actively fought against stricter disclosure laws. As with other Hershey's products, the cocoa is sourced from West African regions with documented child labor, and meaningful structural changes have not occurred. From a taste perspective, Hershey's Special Dark is often described as bitter and chalky, lacking the complex flavor profile of truly high-quality dark chocolate, making it the worst possible choice from a health standpoint. Now that you know which chocolate brands to avoid, the most important question becomes what you should buy instead. Better options do exist, but they require more awareness and often a slightly higher price. Look for fair trade certifications, which prohibit child labor and guarantee better pay for farmers, even though they are not perfect. Choose organic chocolate whenever possible, as pesticide use is restricted and environmental practices are generally stronger, which can help reduce heavy metal contamination. European chocolate brands are subject to stricter regulations than American products, both in terms of ingredient standards and the legal definition of real chocolate, making them generally safer and higher in quality. Brands such as Tony's Chocolonely were founded specifically to combat child slavery in the cocoa industry and pay significantly higher prices for verified slave-free cocoa. Alter Eco focuses on organic ingredients and ethical sourcing and has demonstrated lower heavy metal levels in testing compared to conventional brands. Equal Exchange operates as a cooperative that works directly with cocoa farmers to ensure profits reach producers rather than corporations. Divine Chocolate is partially owned by cocoa farmers themselves, combining fair pay with high-quality production. Endangered species. Chocolate donates a portion of its profits to wildlife conservation and conducts testing for contaminants. If you must choose mass-market American chocolate, testing shows that Dove and Lindt perform better than Hershey's or Nestlé, though they are far from perfect. The 8 chocolate brands exposed today on Shelf Truth are consumed by millions of people who have no idea what they are actually eating. These products contain dangerous levels of lead and cadmium, come from supply chains with documented child labor, rely on artificial additives, and often barely meet the criteria for real chocolate. Hershey's exceeds safe heavy metal limits. Nestlé holds the worst record on child labor. Mars depends on artificial dyes and heavily processed ingredients. Russell Stover uses petrochemical-based flavorings and minimal cocoa. Palmer is legally not chocolate. Whitman's sells old compound chocolate. Ghirardelli charges premium prices for average quality, and Hershey's Special Dark carries the highest contamination of all tested products. You now know what to look for: fair trade, organic certification, real cocoa butter, and transparent sourcing. You understand that European standards are stricter and that paying slightly more often results in better quality, lower contamination, and stronger ethics. The chocolate industry thrives on consumers not reading labels and not asking questions, and that is exactly what we change here. The chocolate you choose affects your health, the lives of children on cocoa farms, and the environment. Informed purchasing decisions support companies that take responsibility instead of rewarding those that cut every corner to maximize profit.